Hello and welcome, Star Wars players. I apologize for the technical delay. Uh, Hope that you are out there in internet land. We're gonna do. Oh no,
Oh
Garrett.
no,
Garrett says no sound. That's very bad. I will. Oh,
it's just
but
Garrett. We're
it's
fine.
just Garrett doesn't have sound. Great, that's even better. Um, and Mike Gem in the chat. Hello, Mike. How are you? All right. So tonight we have a great show for you. We're going to do the Online Championship Series Top 16 Draft Selection Show. I'm joined by my friend, teammate, and co-host, Bill Kafer. Bill, are you here tonight?
I am here tonight. I hope people can hear me. That would be great. If
All
not,
right.
it'll be a more fun show.
Very cool. Very cool. So, we have a little pre-show, a little quick analysis that we're going to go over, and then we'll get into the brackets. So, the first thing I have here is I have our 2022 bracket completed, and then I've also outlined the players that made it from both 2022 and 2023. The red number is their seeding this year. So you can see here, we'll cover our faces a little bit here. This is last year's bracket. We had Justin Desai as our big winner. And you can see he made it again. He moved from the 1 seed all the way down to the 16 seed this year. We have returning second place finisher Matt HT, or I guess not finisher, but second in the original seeding. Brad Kipple, Mike Kessling, Drew, Joe, and Gavin all rejoining us. So that kind of gives you an idea of who our returning cast of characters is. But we also have some people that weren't in last year but have been in the playoffs before. Bill, do you have those for us?
Yeah, so people that have made the OCS top 16 before, Jared Napolitano coming back this year, Timo Dusel coming back this year, Chris Werf's coming back this year, Justin Branch making it again this year, and then Tom Struther as well. You may know him as Tom.
You may know him as Tom. Awesome. So, and then in addition to those, we have four first timers who have never made the OCS playoffs before. We have Yoshi, Sam, Stimpy, who is Bill, Mike Pistone, and Treadwell, who's Jeff from Las Vegas. So they all are first timers. Here's what the bracket looks like now before we fill it out. You can see the names and the seating along there. Everybody who needs to has sent in their lists of draft picks and who they would like to play against. We did have a couple people we wanted to mention that just missed out. Got really close to the top 16 throughout the various months of the OCS, especially Heisenberg, who was second in the second half, the total second half playoffs, essentially for the second half. And there was only one spot there. And then for the full year, he was third, and there were two spots there. So he missed by one spot on both of those two angles. So tough break for him. I also want to give a shout out to most recent Hall of Famer Greg Shaw, who was in last year and just barely missed on a couple of those angles this year. And last but not least, our world's runner-up Casey Ennis, who again very close on multiple axes, but just didn't quite make the cut. So, Bill, I know last year you were not in a position to pick. You were a picky, not a picker, but you were in the playoffs last year. What were your thoughts going in, and what is your strategy going into a bracket like this, and who you want to pick?
So yeah, I mean it's tough, right? Because all of these players are incredible players, had incredible years, right? And that's one of the things I want to stress right away, how tough it is to even make this top 16, right? So for those people that just missed out, it's still an incredible year. You talked about it. We had 9 new people this year compared to last year, right? So only 7 holdovers. So it just kind of speaks to how tough it is to be in there. I was in a unique position, I think, because I qualified very early in February. Had a pretty mediocre year the rest of the year. So I was, I think, 14th or 15th, right, last year going into this. Like you said, I was the second pick from Matt Harrison Trainer. Um, Totally reasonable. I would have picked me there too. So I really had no expectations going into this, right? It was just kind of happy to be here, um, happy to have made it that far, get a couple points. Um, Obviously, I did a little better than I thought I would last year, but it's a fun time.
Nice. And so, if you had been in that top of the bracket, what would be going through your mind, and what are you trying to target? The perceived weakest player? Are you trying to do rivalry matchups? What are your thoughts there?
It's probably not a time for rivalry matchups, right?
You
Once
hear
you get
that,
in,
Mike Kessling? It's not a time for rivalry matchups.
I hope he picks Drew again. Um, Yeah, so what I would be looking at is how I match up against the player themselves, right? So sometimes that's play style, sometimes that's, past records, sometimes that's if they have a deck they like, maybe you can exploit that. Um, I looked through the bracket this year. I had a couple people that I think I would pick just because I traditionally have matched up well against them and traditionally match up well against their play style. And I have a couple people that other people have told me they might be picking that I wouldn't almost never pick, right? Just because of how they play and how it kind of throws me for a loop sometimes.
When you say playstyle, do you mean specifically in terms of decks they might pick? Like you think they would play a deck that you are not particularly fond of playing against? Or are you talking more like just generally like they play aggressively or things like that?
I think a little of both, but definitely more of the latter, right? So if somebody is, an aggressive player that can kind of put some pressure on you, if somebody kind of plays kind of the style I do, where like I tend to want to have no weaknesses in my deck builds rather than, a big strength, right? So that could be a way that they build their deck.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's enough preamble. Hopefully, we've given time for people to filter in. I have the lists from everybody who is involved, so let's just get going. Let's move to our bracket here.
Do it.
So, with the first pick, we have Brad Kipple, and he only had to submit one name, and the name he submitted was Chris Werfs. So
Okay.
Brad will be starting off against Werfs.
Yeah, we can talk about Brad a little bit, right? Like Brad very quietly had the best year of anybody, right? Like you look it down. I think he qualified in June. He went 12-0. You look down, and then he's the top seed, right? Definitely a consistent player. Has a couple of decks that he likes a lot to play, so I wouldn't be surprised if he rolls a couple of those out um, in this matchup. And definitely has been there before, so he kind of knows how this is going to go. Chris Werfs is one of those players that I mentioned, right? So when you're talking about somebody I've matched up well against traditionally, somebody who kind of plays the same general style that I do and kind of has that deck matchup, right? So like not going to go super aggressive, not going to go super conservative, right? Somewhere in that middle ground where I like to live as well. That's definitely a player that I would like to play in this spot, so I can see why Brad went with Werfs here.
Sure. So to your point about him qualifying in June, the fact that he ended up with a one seed also means that Brad probably had some near misses before that. That he had some good months and just got beat out a little bit as things went along. We do also have the grid of that Adam Echo Based Trooper provided to us of the head-to-head records here, and you can see. Sorry, I'll slide it above the logo here. And you can see that actually Brad and Worst did not play during the seasonal portion of the OCS. So I think that's a pretty interesting pick for him.
That thread did kind of tell me a couple things, right? When I looked at that, and it was a little surprising, right? So Brad lost 16 games all year, if I'm reading this correctly. Um, but he only played 7 games against other OCS participants, and he went 0-7 in those 7 games. It's definitely interesting. I don't know if he was kind of trying to select matches or just happened to come out that way, right? But it was an interesting stat that I saw.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. Um, so on to our second pick here.
So
The
that makes,
the
sorry,
next
before you do
player,
that,
sure,
that makes Chris, or excuse me, that makes Brad the number 1 seed and Worf's the 16 seed.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we have Tom as our number 2 seed, not moving obviously, and Tom has selected to play against Gavin.
Okay. That's one where I think they have a lot of history of playing against each other, right? So obviously, both of them predominantly online players, usually online. eh, they have a bit of an overlap, right? So in like the evenings, Eastern time. I know Tom is a little bit of a later player. Gavin can be a little bit of an earlier player, but sometimes he does play later. But I think
I
Tom made
think
that pick
Gavin's
because
also
he
on the
has.
West Coast though, so like the
Is he?
time slots do
Okay.
match up.
Yeah. And that's one thing I didn't mention when talking about who you might pick. There's a non-zero thought to can I play against this person reasonably easily, right? Like are they in the same time zone as me? Is it going to be tough to schedule a game? Um, these guys obviously a lot of history. I'm going to pull up that cross bracket here and see what we got for Gavin. Looks like 0 and 2 for Tom.
Sure, let me pull that up for you. Yeah, so Tom is 0-2 against Gavin. So that's pretty interesting that he maybe there's a measure of revenge there that he's interested in.
Yeah, that and he put it right in the chat right there. He said, "I want vengeance." So
There it is. Tom's a man who wants his vengeance. So you can see there's our first 2 picks. We will move right along. Our 3 seed is Sam, our teammate Yoshi. He has been in the lab to say the least. I've been very impressed with his just constant work ethic. Being on a team with him and seeing how often he likes to get in the lab, grind some games, try new decks, things like that. And he is selected as his first round opponent, Stimpy. So
yeah.
that will be
So before we
another.
jump into that one,
Oh,
I
sure.
just want to point out that Jared threw in the chat that Gavin knocked Tom out in 2019. So there's extra layers of vengeance there. And
Oh,
then I
there
did
you
want to
go.
point out from Gavin's stats that same Echo Base Trooper thread. Gavin played 10 games against OCS participants and he went 9-1. So definitely a lot of quality wins there.
Wow.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's a
moving to
big
this
stat.
third pick. So third pick here, we got you said Sam picked Bill.
Yes.
Right. Both of these players are newcomers to the OCS, so it's interesting that they're going to be matched up in the first round here. Like you said in your introduction, Sam is just a grinder, right? Like always looking for a game. Has had a lot of success this year. He top aided at nationals. Came very close at Worlds this year. And then Bill is no slouch either, right? A former member, or I guess I probably the flagship member since I left the chat, but the flagship member of Team Bill. Um, Definitely had a lot of success last year, and then obviously a ton of success this year in the OCS. I think he's right up there with Brad in our league for the race to win the Yavin League, and has been playing very well lately. So he is someone that maybe you might not think the strongest player, but he's someone that I had way down on my board that I would not want to match up against Bill right now.
Although in Sam's defense, he is 3-0 against Bill over the course of the OCS, so maybe there's some measure of comfort there for him.
Well, there you go. And Bill, I will caution you. At Worlds, I went 0-2 against people named Sam. So good luck.
All right. So with that out of the way, let's get to our number 4 player, another teammate of ours, Mike Kessling.
Did he pick Drew?
Mike Kessling picked Jared Napolitano as his opponent.
All right. Yeah.
So
So
not going back
I
to the well against Drew, which is
not
amusing.
going back to the well against Drew. He got him once. He didn't need to get him again. Or I don't even know who won that matchup, to be honest with you. But yeah, so Mike obviously in the midst of a great run, especially over the past year and a half, 2 years, is on track to be part of the Outrider Cup team for the U.S. Jared, of course, a former Outrider Cup team member for the U.S., so this is a definitely a high stakes game. I was at the Coruscant Regionals with Jared over the weekend, so definitely talked to Jared. He has said he hasn't played as much recently, and I think that's something that Mike picked up on, and maybe that's why he went with Jared here for his pick. Jared is another one of those players like Werfs where I feel like they play kind of similar, and Mike as well. So Mike and Jared kind of play similar, so they should be really good games, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that matchup for sure. I think they're both really solid players who they just have good fundamentals for the most part. Just kind of
Yeah,
don't make
just
too many
good solid
mistakes.
fundamentals,
Yeah,
good footwork.
good footwork. All right, and our 5 seed is the aforementioned Mr. Drew, and Drew has selected for his opponent Mike Pistone.
All right. Yeah, so Drew here with the fifth seed, taking Mike. Mike, of course, a newcomer to the OCS this year, or to the top 16, excuse me, this year. Mike is again one of those players as well, just like Jared, just like Kessling, just like Werfs. They all kind of have the same play style to me, right? Uh, it's like a solid fundamental play style. Now you have fundamentals in my head, right? Um, so Drew is of the people on our team. I feel like Drew is best situated to exploit that play style, right? So he can, see a line in a game, um, and then the next game he's not going to lose to that line, right? Does that make sense? I don't know if that
Yes,
makes sense.
it does definitely. Although
Okay.
I will note that Drew and Mike did not play at all during the OCS season, so there's not necessarily that level of familiarity there.
Yeah. And then it's nice that, Kessling and Drew ended up 4-5, so they're going to play in round two if they make it there.
True.
So there'll still be vengeance. It's fine.
Yeah, that'll be a fun matchup. Maybe they figured they didn't need to move that up any earlier because they just assumed they would not get picked by anybody else and would end up in that 4-5 situation.
Yeah. Potential new allies on new allies violence.
That's right. All right.
Potential.
Oh, Mike Pistone just entering the chat now. Mike, you were just selected as the opponent for Drew Lichtenstein. So you're going to be playing Drew in the first round. Congratulations and good luck. So back to our bracket here. Our next entrant is Justin, known as Silver Glen. He will be our 6th seed, so he's going to be over here. And he has selected for his opponent Treadwell.
Okay. Yeah, so Justin Branch coming back to the top 16 this year after just, if I remember correctly, just narrowly missing it last year. I think he
Yes.
only played the second half and just missed that second half bid. Taking Jeff here, who obviously had a very good year last year but didn't quite make it to OCS, but then did make it to OCS this year. It's interesting to see Justin, I think, worked with Team 5 for a bit, if I'm not mistaken, and somebody might correct me on that. But Justin now a member of the KTOD Plus, right? So maybe he's trying to get that feud going again. I know sometimes Joe and Justin have a little friendly rivalry, right? Feud's the wrong word, friendly rivalry. Um, but yeah, so that should be definitely an interesting. I think we're going to talk about team composition later, but the fact that the two of them have two of the better teams behind them for that matchup is going to be very interesting.
I agree. I'm looking forward to that one. I think to your point about Jeff, I think it's interesting that he kind of flip flopped this year from having such a breakout year in paper last year, but kind of just missing on that OCS. Whereas this year it was kind of the reverse. His paper year probably did not go as he'd planned, but he's here in the OCS playoffs and ready to do some online crushing. So,
Yeah.
all right. Then we get to our 7 seed, who is going to be Dylan, Timo, and Dylan has selected Joe
I mean,
Olson.
geez, of the three left.
Yes. No easy outs left there. So Dylan will be
Yeah,
playing Joe Olson in the top 16 here.
nice. So Timo again coming back this year, having made it a couple years back. I don't quite remember when. And then Joe obviously returning after last year. Um, you get down this low, right? You got four players left. Pick your poison at that point, right? And if I'm Timo, I think I do agree with taking Joe here over Justin or Matt. Um, kind of, I wonder if this is like you wanna beat the best, right? Because
Sure.
Joe is having the better year of anybody playing in these. Um, I think he's on pace to be captain for the Outrider Cup team for the U.S. So maybe he's getting a little work in there because Timo's on the he's on the bubble there for the OCS, or excuse me, for the Outrider Cup, which I know they're going to talk about tomorrow on Hollow Theater at 9 o'clock.
Ooh,
Um, yeah, little plug. You like that?
I do.
Um, yeah. So Timo is definitely who I was talking about without naming names earlier. When you talk about somebody who has a slightly different play style from the rest of the players that I've talked about a little bit, definitely a bit more aggressive. Definitely willing to see if something works, and if it doesn't, oh well. Um, I imagine this game will get scheduled for very early in the time frame of this because they're both players that like to get their games done as they can. But yeah, and then Joe obviously having a great year too. Made top eight at Worlds. Has Endor coming up. I know Endor is the one he hasn't won yet for his Grand Slam, if you will. So maybe he knocks that out here. Be interesting to watch that one too. I mean, they're all incredible matchups, right? They're all great players.
They really are. Like, I'm very excited to watch these games play out. And then, of course, last but absolutely not least, our 8-9 matchup here is an absolute clash of titans. We have Matthew Harrison Trainer against the reigning champion, Justin Desai.
Yeah, go figure. The reigning champion picked last. Um,
It's funny how that
yeah,
works.
it's it's. I mean, I bet you Justin would say the same thing that he's not in the shape he was last year, but he did beat Matt in the finals of Worlds last year. Um, that's I can't even say anything about this matchup. It's going to be a blast to watch, right?
Yes, absolutely. I cannot wait for this one. It's going to be a real barn burner, as they say. But like you said, there's no bad ones. All of these are going to be just an absolute treat. I look forward to getting my popcorn and streaming these. So now that we have our full bracket revealed, which I'll put back on the screen here,
Yeah, let's see
um,
that.
what are your thoughts? What are we looking at? How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? Yeah, I think one of the things I want to talk about here, as you try to get that bracket up on the screen for me, is kind of how these teams play out, right? And see if we can look at some of these future matchups, right? Like, so we look at, let's start with Justin, because Justin won it last year. So the KTOD plus, right? You got Justin Desai in that 9 seed. You've got, where's Tom? Tom is in that 2 seed in the top right of your bracket. And then you got Justin Branch in the 6 seed in the bottom right. So that's really good.
They really
Really
got
good
a nice
spread for
spread
the
there, yeah.
team, right? Uh, we talk about the new allies, right? So you got in the bottom left corner, you got Drew and Mike Kessling, right? So both in that bottom left corner. You've got newest new ally Matthew Harrison Trainer in that 8 seed playing against Justin in round one. And then you got Sam is over on the right side in that 3 seed near the bottom there. So not the best spread, but
Well,
that's there's still the
there's
potential for a new allies
there sure
versus
are a
new
lot of
allies
us,
final.
so it's again it's the
Yeah,
same as every major where it's tough to dodge the entire team.
we talk about Team Five. Team Five's got two members in. That's Joe in the 10 seed there in the top right, and then Jeff in the. You threw my bracket away. Jeff in the bottom right there. I forget the seed he
The
is.
11 seed, yeah,
The 11
against
seed there.
Justin.
And then you got a couple people that are one-offs, right? So Tima could be worse. Put Bill in there. Stimpy, where's he at? He is the 14 seed there. You've got Team Moneyball's got Jared in there. He's their horse. And you got the Killer Bees have Werfs in there. Um, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these people that don't necessarily have, formal teams, right? Like Pistone or Gavin or Timo or Brad team up with some people. Especially Pistone, I think he could end up working with that It Could Be Worse team with Chris Kelly and Jared Consker and Casey and Bill. So I think that's going to be interesting. I think I'm most looking forward to the match between. I mean, obviously it's Matt and Justin. Like that's going to be a great match and a world's final rematch. Um, Also looking forward to that bottom right corner there, the Yoshi, Stimpy, Justin Branch, and Jeff Levine corner. Kind of more newer success out of that group than kind of the rest of the bracket there. So that'll be interesting to see who comes out of there.
It feels like the wild card corner to me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
you took you took it down again, so I can't see it
Oh,
again.
sorry, sorry. This is why I shared it with you. I'll put it back up for you. So, were there any picks that you were really shocked at, or do you think it went kind of like everybody made sense for what they had?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything too shocking there. Um, yeah, so it went what Werfs, and then Gavin, and then Bill, and then Jared, and then Pistone, and then Jeff, and then pick your poison of Joe. So I think those are reasonable picks. I don't think there's anything that shocked me there or was so far out of the ordinary. May not have been who I would have picked in that order, but reasonable.
All right, fair enough. Any parting thoughts other than just absolute excitement and getting to watch this play out?
Oh, I guess one of the things we didn't talk about is that this is going to be all done in a new meta, right? So Set 22 just came out, within 9 days. I think the only lists that are going to be posted before lists are due for this are going to be Coruscant regional lists and then the now HUDA regional lists. So the participants will have to kind of work with their teams or by themselves and come up with what they think the meta is going to look like. And if I recall correctly, they're submitting their lists for the top 16 and also the top 8 at the same time, right?
Yes, that is correct. The players can submit two sets of lists if they want, but they have to identify which one is for each round. So players next Monday, or by next Monday, they can submit at any time, will need to submit a list saying these are my top 16 lists and these are my top 8 lists. So they kind of they have perfect information for that first round, but the second round they have multiple people that they kind of have to think about. Well, who do I think is going to win that? What do they like to play? Things like that. So I think there's some neat cat and mouse possibilities with that setup.
Yeah, and all of that with a brand new meta. So I look forward to those games.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Bill, and thank you to everybody in chat. We hope to see you at twitch.tv/SWCCGPC for streams of all of these games. Every game that's played will be streamed or replayed in some capacity on the PC Twitch channel. So check out the forums for the times as the players are able to agree on them. And congratulations to all 16 players who made the cut here. It's quite an achievement. Obviously, the OCS is really it's a grind. Like there's 12 games times 6 months is just so much Star Wars, and so I have nothing but respect for everybody that made the cut here, and I'm really looking forward to some great games. So thank you
That
to
grind's
everyone.
not over yet.
That's right. That's right. They're up to let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, up to 8 more games that have to be played out here, and all under the real pressure cooker that is the playoffs. So very cool stuff. Thank you all for joining me, and have a good night, everybody.